Human beings are storytellers. We crave the comfort of a well crafted linear narrative as it helps us make some sense of the fractured messiness of reality. We have always made use of stories to better understand the rapid changes happening in the world around us. By studying novels written during a particular moment in time, we can tell how people living through that time in history were negotiating with important socio-cultural, political, and economic changes. My dissertation investigates the cultural history of the evolving rights of widows in Britain and India in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. I focus on how the rights of widows were represented in the novels written during that time and how literature dealt with the changing laws and the radical effects of those laws. As I read numerous Indian and British novels about widows during my research, I was struck by one major difference in how the romantic plots involving the widows concluded. Indian novels of that time usually ended with the widow either committing suicide, getting murdered, or being permanently exiled. On the other hand, the British novels often ended with the widow getting married to one of her suitors. I argue that in both cases, the novels aim to contain the disruptive power of the widow, albeit in two very different ways. In India, a law was passed in 1856 which finally allowed Hindu widows to get married. The novels written in the years following this decision focused on the dangers of having young widows around bachelors and unhappily married men, and a backlash to the new law was reflected in the novels that ended with the unfortunate widows dying or getting exiled. Their removal, after all, was necessary to maintain the status quo. 19th century England, on the other hand, was dealing with changing property laws that gave widows increasing access to their late husband's property. Once they remarried, however, the new husband became the owner of the widow's property. Through these endings, the widows lose the power that changing laws and reforms had bestowed on them. For the Indian widow, it's the right to get married and regain access to the social advantages given to the married Hindu woman. And for the British widow, it is the right to be an independent property owning woman. Legislation cannot, on its own, bring about social change. By studying such narratives that portray the various forms of backlash against changing laws and reform movements, especially in the context of women's rights, we can make sense of how patriarchy opposes change, and we can get better at recognizing and eventually resisting such backlash. Thank you.